Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by my transatlantic co-host, it's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Pretty good. You know I'm not in the studio with you, though.
I know. It's a little strange. But it's nice to hear your voice.
We are 3,000 miles apart, but crystal clear, thanks to telecommunications.
Yes. Hooray for the internet, and hooray for the Champions League, which was an incredibly exciting final.
It certainly was. We're going to talk Champions League, we're going to talk USA versus Venezuela, and we're also going to talk USA versus Venezuela. If you've been following the US national teams, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. Here's an interesting thing, Taylor. Champions League final. Real Madrid won 4-1 against Juventus. Because I was over here, I watched it on BT Sport. You watched it on, I believe, Fox, correct?
Yes.
So we had different experiences, different broadcasters, and we haven't really talked about the game. So I'm really interested in what happens when we sort of don't watch together and coalesce our opinions about what happened.
We fight, I think, in the end.
But it's more interesting for the listeners, right?
I think so. Worth noting, I didn't actually watch it on TV. I watched it on Fox Soccer To Go on my computer.
Okay.
So I think I had even different announcers than a lot of other people because I did not have John Strong doing the play-by-play.
Oh, maybe you may have had the same announcers as me in the end. Did you have Rio Ferdinand or Steven Gerrard talking at all? Or Steve McManaman?
I tended to zone out when they were talking, so maybe, but I don't think so.
Burn. Transatlantic burn. All right, let's talk. Real Madrid won 4-1. 2 goals from Cristiano Ronaldo. First half seemed a lot closer. Second half, it really felt like Real Madrid just like pulled away. 3 goals. The big question I think people will have is, what was the difference between the first half and the second half? Why were Real able to pull ahead in the second half?
Well, first of all, I think you've already kind of explained part of it there, but I saw so many people, including some of our friends, just saying like, oh man, Juventus, like they're not even trying to play soccer anymore. Oh, they look so bad. Why do they look so bad? And it was as though like they just came out and were bad all of a sudden. And in reality, yeah, it's absolutely the proactive tactics of Real Madrid and Zinedine Zidane is what changed this entire game.
Are you sure it wasn't Juventus said, let's go and be bad in the second half?
I mean, it was, some people were legitimately like, why are they trying to play anymore? Like, why are they so bad? And it's just like, well, they're not trying to be. And I really do think that it was that halftime talk from Zidane and just a few little adjustments, because I think Juventus really game planned this in the first half, and I think looked better for it.
It worked, right? The first half worked. That 3 at the back, 4 across the middle, that really worked for Juventus.
I'm calling it a 3.5 at the back because I really.
Who's the half?
It's still like it is like Dani Alves, Barzagli. It's a combination because I still see it listed in various places as a 4-2-3-1, and it obviously wasn't, because you did have Chiellini, Bonucci, and Barzagli in that obvious back three. Like a lot of times they were like within 15 yards of each other, like all three.
The other BBC.
But there were times when because I think Dani Alves' job was to roam a lot more and to really limit the influence of Isco. Yeah. So you'd see Dani Alves come centrally a lot of the time and almost be like another central midfielder.
Yeah.
And then Barzagli would sort of shoot out to the right-hand side just to cover a little bit. And so at times it did look more like a back 4, even if it was still a back 3.
Okay, and then how did Real Madrid manage to sort of, what did they do to change, to exploit that in the second half, if that's what they did?
Well, I think they finally realized that like Dani Alves was there for the taking a little bit, and you can see that even in the first goal, it comes from Alexandro's side, obviously that square ball that Ronaldo finishes, but the move starts on the left-hand side, and I think it's because Dani Alves isn't necessarily out of position, but he's not in the position that you would expect a wing-back to be. So Madrid have the time to like pick their head up, play that long diagonal ball to Dani Carvajal, who's moved up a little bit down that far side, and now he's wide open.
We're talking first half, first goal here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I rewatched that just before we started recording, and Carvajal hasn't just moved up a little bit; he has sprinted. Yep. There's a moment where he's not in the play, and he just like goes from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. I'm saying because he's Spanish, as fast as he can down that wing to be there for that 1-2 with Ronaldo.
Yeah, and we can talk more about like the specific goals in a second. So overall, I think Madrid kind of figured that out. Like, okay, Dani Alves, not Dani Carvajal. My commentator did make that mistake at one point. He switched them and started talking about the battle of Dani Alves versus Alexandro. Like, you mean Dani Carvajal?
Can you imagine how good Dani Carvajal would be?
I mean, very, very attacking and good at fouling as well. But I do think Madrid still sort of figured that out, that like that left-hand side, or their attacking left-hand side, Juve's right-hand side defending, was open. And I think the thing that really limited their ability to make something happen at the end of the first half was that goal from Mario Mandzukic. I think it kind of shocked them a little bit and made them be like, wait, hold on, maybe we haven't figured this out. But I think in the second half, and you saw it right from kickoff, both the Madrid fullbacks, as soon as the ball is kicked, are 20 yards upfield.
Yes.
And I think from
Marcelo started that kickoff at the halfway line, not with his back four. He started at the halfway line, ready to go.
And I think they just knew that basically that Dani Alves is coming in the middle. There's lots of space out wide. If we push those fullbacks all the way up, it's just two more players that have to be marked. It's two more players that are going to pull Juve players out of position. And from that point on, Juve are always the ones reacting. And if, by definition, if you are being reactive, then you cannot be proactive. And so it falls to Madrid to have the possession and to get the opportunities.
Here's the other thing I saw. Isco in the first half kind of had, license to roam, right? Like my data this week, he was roaming. But in the second half, I noticed he was sort of more disciplined at staying at essentially left midfield. And I think the idea was that if Marcelo's going to get forward down that left wing, we want to make sure there's at least a left midfielder behind him, and also just to have an extra person over there to really double down on going down that side, I think. So even though Dani Alves is a strength for Juventus, I think you're right. I think Zinedine Zidane at half-time was like, all right, we're going to target that side. Let's go get him. Because you even saw balls just lifted in. It wasn't just Marcelo dribbling down the wing. It was balls lifted in over Barzagli for like Benzema to come and sort of meet like down in that channel. So yeah, I think that really is what turned the game.
And then the other thing, this is like kind of complete wild speculation, the first of several times I'm going to do that on today's show. But do you remember the story from Sir Alex Ferguson? It was Roy Keane's biography about how like they were about to play Tottenham. He didn't want a whole big speech. And he was all ready for this like big like G'ing up speech, and Ferguson walked in and just said, "Lads, it's Tottenham, like let's do them," and then walked out. That was it. I wouldn't be surprised if Zidane gave sort of a similar halftime talk, just because we knew the narrative coming in that Juve hadn't won in a very long time, that they had lost the Champions League final many times, that this was Madrid trying to be the first back-to-back champions in the Champions League era, And so it felt like it should be Madrid kind of, okay, we've been here before, we know what we're doing, Juve being really, really amped up for it, and maybe being a little bit like overawed by the occasion. And in the first 30 minutes or so, I felt like it was the opposite. Yeah. That Juve were the ones executing their game plan that looked much calmer. And the one that really stood out to me, where there was a moment when Madrid were a little bit rattled, Juve had the ball, they finally win the ball back, and it goes to Toni Kroos, and Ronaldo is about 10 yards in front of him, and does the like calm down gesture, like slow down, puts his hands, you can't see me because you're 3,000 miles away, but does that like slow it down. Kroos picks his head up, sees Benzema, I think it was Benzema, tries to play a 40-yard ball that gets intercepted, and Ronaldo turns around and just screams at him. and I really do think that like that's not me saying that Ronaldo's being petulant. It's me saying I think Ronaldo was the one who was saying like, guys, calm it down. Like we can do this. Just settle a little bit. And I think they were just a little bit too amped up. You saw those like unnecessary yellow cards, and maybe could have been red cards later on in the game, that some players I think were just too like amped and ready to go. And once they settled a bit, I think it was Juve who then started to kind of get overawed by the occasion. Well,
can we talk about Ronaldo then? Because like you said, I know people like to sort of talk about him in terms of greatness, which I think is fair after what just happened, right? But I think you're right. Like maybe a thing that people don't think about is just his experience and leadership that he brings now. I mean, this is a guy that like captained a Portugal team to a trophy.
Yeah, I mean, I had that. A buddy of mine texted me right before the game started and said that he was having a debate with his uncle, who's like, Messi's the best player in the world right now, and he was saying like, is it really this big of a gap? Because he's talking to me like I'm an idiot for saying that I don't think it's that big of a gap. And I said, I mean, I am one of the people who thinks that Messi is probably the best player in the world. This year, the Ballon d'Or voting probably will not agree with me. But I do think, as I said to him, that Messi is like probably a better player, but Ronaldo knows how to win. And he's ruthless and he gets those results. And we talked about this, forgive me, I'm going to ramble for a second, but we talked about this in our preview, that Ronaldo might like have those moments where like he shoots wide and looks frustrated, and it seems like maybe he's not having like the that kind of Champions League performance game, and then he scores 2 goals out of nowhere, and that's what he does, and that's why he is ruthlessly efficient.
It was just like, was it Bayern Munich, I think, where he wasn't in the game a lot, but he ended with a hat trick.
Yep.
I watched this game with my dad, like as I do with a lot of soccer back here, and I think my dad remembers Ronaldo from the Man United days. You know what I mean? Like dribbly, like he's always on the ball, always doing something. And my dad kept saying, "Oh, he's he's been really quiet. We're not seeing much of him. And I said to him, like, he's not that player anymore. He's basically a centre forward, and you're not going to see him for, good 10 minutes at a time. He might not do anything, but suddenly Madrid will launch an attack, and he'll make some space for himself, and he'll be on the end of it, and he'll be scoring. And I don't want like credit for being proved right, because it's not as if this is like some magical prediction I made, right? This is just what Ronaldo does now. This is his game now. It's as if he's sort of like this world-class striker, purely striker that like he's out of the game for a long time. He's like Raul or Inzaghi or someone like that. He's a goal poacher now, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think, first of all, you do deserve credit, because good job by you for figuring out a narrative.
Well, Ronaldo helped.
That's not, fair point. He gets like 10% of the credit. You get 90% for his 2 goals. But it made me happy. I read, we both love Jonathan Wilson, Inverting the Pyramid author. I read his like kind of recap of the game, and it was essentially that like Ronaldo scored 2 goals, and you might not be able to say anything else about the game that he did. And that was kind of what makes him great. And I think Jonathan Wilson's point was that he has like a 3-tier career, where it was like the first tier was the step overs and a lot of flash. Yeah, second tier was like learning how to be sort of efficient and deadly. Yeah. And now he's transitioned into that poacher,
just
like, talismanic striker. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they
were
don't
waste your energy deadly, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't expend too much, have bad hair, don't be afraid to yell at people, and score clinical goals with really, really well taken finishes.
Do you want to talk about the goals? I'm not sure how you want to do this. Do you want to talk about the goals in detail, or just certain goals you want to pick out and talk about? We have a lot to get through.
Yeah, certain goals, and I think the first one is the logical place to start, maybe.
Okay, let's talk about that first goal then. Cristiano Ronaldo.
So, I mean, do you want to take it all the way back to the beginning, since you were watching it again in the Dani Carvajal run?
No, I mean, actually, that's just my main thing I wanted to point out, was the Dani Carvajal run. And just the way that Real Madrid switched the field so quickly, right? They went from left to right, I think through Benzema. Was it Benzema's ball out right to Ronaldo? Then Ronaldo lays it off to the onrushing Carvajal, and then receives the return pass and bangs it. The one thing I'd say is, we talked before this about the Buffon versus Navas narrative. And Buffon conceded 4 goals in the end. And I can't fault him for any of them. And especially like this first one, I think it comes off Bonucci's toe.
Yep.
It's just,
I think it's Bonucci.
Yeah. And it's barely perceptible, right? Like, first time you see it, you're like, oh, did that bend? Did he knuckle that somehow? And then when you see the replays, you just see it hit it's almost like Bonucci stubs his toe on the ball on the way through and just redirects it into the corner.
Yeah. I mean, and 2 things there. The first is that even though it's Bonucci who gets a toe to it, I'm going to say this is Chiellini's fault. And I'm going to say that because this isn't why, but I was talking to Albert, former co-host, was on the show recently. Yeah. Before the game, and his prediction was 3-1 Madrid.
Bad languaging it up on the Total Soccer Show.
He sure was, but he said 3-1 Madrid, and I was like, dude, you may have conceded 3 goals this entire tournament. Like, there's no way they're conceding 3 goals in this game. If Madrid win, it's going to be like 1-0 or 2-1. So I was wrong. But that's like, I just had that much faith in that Juve defense, that they're not going to make stupid mistakes. They're not going to switch off. And this goal is absolutely Giorgio Chiellini ball watching. He gets sucked in by that Carvajal run. He's focused on that ball, and he completely loses Cristiano Ronaldo, who just kind of drifts away from him just a little bit. And that's why he's wide open.
But isn't this a case of Chiellini being left essentially 2v1? Like, it's Chiellini versus Carvajal and Ronaldo, and no one can cover that, not even Giorgio Chiellini.
Yeah, I mean, you can make the argument that the left wing back should probably be helping out a little bit more, so that he is not quite as exposed.
Where was Alexandro?
Frantically trying to help cover, I believe. But I really do think it was just Chiellini sort of in that moment of like, wait, he's got the ball and he's dribbling into the box. But also Cristiano Ronaldo was here. I don't know what to do. And as he was indecisive, Ronaldo knew exactly what to do, which was just trying to like back away a little bit, create a little bit of separation, and give himself some time to finish that ball and finish it well. Yes, it's a deflection, but it's still a good goal, and obviously a clutch goal in the sense that I do think Madrid were rocking a little bit. And I was only frustrated that you weren't here watching with me, because I wanted to say in those first 10 to 15 minutes that Juve looked really, really, really good and really, really up for it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I had that thought of like, this feels like they have them for the taking, but Madrid are going to settle. And there's going to be that time when Madrid will get a chance and it will be like, oh, Juve missed their opportunity. And that's exactly what this was Madrid finally being like, all right, we're around Madrid. Let's take care of the situation.
Well, speaking of, while you were describing that first Ronaldo goal, I thought for a second that maybe you were confused and thinking of the third goal. But I think it's just that the same thing happened twice. Because that third goal...
personnel.
Yeah, that third goal that Ronaldo scores, It's Modric, right? Modric gets to the end line, and it's Chiellini he goes across to try and cover that sort of low ball in. And I think what happens is Bonucci is covering Benzema. So as soon as Chiellini goes wide to try and cover the low ball in from Modric, Ronaldo spots that gap and like drives himself in there. Which again, it's the two things we've been saying, right? It's Ronaldo's sort of fox in the box, new sensibilities, or the thing that he seems most effective at doing now. But it's also Chiellini trying to cover too many people because he's sort of stranded out there on the left.
Yeah. But two things there. One, it's worth noting that whereas the first goal came from kind of like a really good build-up and a lot of good quick interplay from Madrid, this one came from good pressure. That basically they just put Juve under pressure. They make a bad pass, and I think it's Luka Modric who actually intercepts that ball. Then he combines. And he combines with, I think it might be Carvajal again. It might be Toni Kroos. I'm not sure. But either way, that's where they're able to get that ball, play that 1-2. He gets in behind and he scores that ball. So it's good pressure. But it's also Ronaldo proving that I think he'd be like a very good pool player because he knows his angles and he knows like how to hit the ball just right to put the English on it, because it's a ball coming laterally from the right-hand side, like on the touchline. Ronaldo is at the near post, and he knows exactly how to hit that ball with the instep to take it at the near post and put it far side netting.
Okay, who wins in a game of pool? Cristiano Ronaldo or Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
I mean, Uncle Phil every time, but it's closer than you would expect.
I think Uncle Phil would let Ronaldo win the first round, and then he would say, Jeffrey, break out Lucille. And then Ronaldo would be in trouble.
20-something listeners, how these deep-cut Fresh Prince of Bel-Air references working for you?
Well, that scene went kind of viral on Facebook in the last week, so that's when I rewatched it recently.
Gotcha.
All right, so we're going to say Uncle Phil for lawyering and pool, but definitely Cristiano Ronaldo for Champions League final goals.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I'm good with that declaration, yeah.
Well, should we talk about the goal that sort of put Real Madrid ahead? It's the Casemiro goal in the second half. And I've got to say, it's all about Sami Khedira, isn't it?
Yep.
It's all about the deflection off Khedira. I feel really bad for him playing against his old team. There was that quote in the build-up, right, about like I'd play 10 good games and I'd play the 11th one and people would ask if I was good enough. And he kind of got moved on, right, even though he was doing fine at Real Madrid. And then it's not an own goal because, it's a Casemiro shot on target. But you've got to think Buffon saves this one as well if it didn't deflect off of Khedira trying to block it.
Yeah, I think our friend Brooks Peck tweeted out something along the lines of, you have to give credit to Zidane for inserting deflection into his starting 11. And yeah, he pretty much did, because that's where your goals come from. Yeah, and the first time I saw it, like, my notes, I was super excited. In my notes were just like, Casemiro, cracking goal. And it's all caps, and I was super excited about it, because it looks for a second as though he has just ripped that ball from 40 yards out. And then, you watch the replay, and it definitely takes a vicious deflection off of Sami Khedira, who really can't be too thrilled about that goal or anything that happened on the field yesterday.
Well, at least he's got that World Cup, right?
Yeah, there's that.
And to triple down on our sort of Dani Alves has gone wandering narrative. I rewatched this goal, and it's Dani Alves is in a collision with Casemiro, like Alves all the way down on the right wing. Casemiro really knocks him to the floor, and that's why Alves
yells at him.
Yeah, he does, right? Like, get down. And then Alves is absent for the rest of the play, like kind of understandably. But Real Madrid, once again, they go down the left. It's Karim Benzema gets that ball down the left. I think Barzagli is drawn out because he's trying to cover the Dani Alves space. And you've got to say, in hindsight, maybe 3 at the back was the wrong way to go for Real Madrid. If we can point to the fact there was space in behind and Barzagli and Chiellini on different occasions were drawn out and space was exposed in the middle because they were trying to cover where their fullbacks used to be, maybe Max Allegri got it wrong.
Yeah, I think he did. And I think it's tough to say because I think Madrid are that good, and maybe Zinedine Zidane is that good of a manager that no matter what he did, it was always going to be problematic.
Yeah.
But I do think you could see that in sort of I think I took a screenshot, I'll post it later if you want, of his face after the third goal, I believe it was. And it's just very much the definitive picture of, oh no, like I have done some things that I did not mean to do. And I think that's why you do kind of consistently have, especially in the second half, Madrid with lots of time on the ball and lots of space, and Juve really, really just trying to scramble to react.
I think Allegri was thinking, exit without saving.
I've done that before. I do want to add though,
come back with a back four.
So yeah, exactly. Restart it, maybe injure Ronaldo in the first 2 minutes, and you're good to go. Which is maybe a tactic that both teams tried to do by injuring people. And I did want to say that this is what makes this game like sort of confusing, is that like, so that moment that you just talked about when Carvajal very cleanly, it's a really hard tackle, but he wins that ball. And he's right to sort of be like, get up, Dani Alves. But he really does turn and
Casemiro it was.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, turns and like gestures to him like, oh, get up, come on now.
Mm-hmm.
And then goes down the field and scores a goal. And in my notes, like, I started to write, like, once again, Madrid are getting in people's faces, because that was a thing they did routinely.
Yeah.
That if they thought a Juve player was diving, if they thought they went down too easy, they would get right up in their face. 3 different times, I think Sergio Ramos stood over a player on the ground and yelled at them. Casemiro did it twice.
Yep.
And so I kept wanting to think, like, so you guys got to calm down. Like, you're going to get a red card. You're being too much. You're being too aggressive. But then they would go and do something spectacular. So it kind of balanced out, I guess.
And then the only red card on the night, was Juan Cuadrado for 2 yellow cards. The second of which was for viciously attacking Sergio Ramos from behind, or accidentally walking into him. I've watched this replay many, many, many times. Yep. I don't know which it is.
So first of all, because I want to say that maybe some people might have missed a couple of the replays. So the way the replays initially made it look is it's a really, really hard tackle. But again, a good, clean tackle. It's just really hard from Ramos on Cuadrado.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it puts it out for a throw-in for Juventus. Cuadrado then is like trying to go take the throw-in as quickly as he can, and the replay made it look as though he kind of like brushed past Sergio Ramos and like touched him with his hand, and then Ramos went down as though he'd been shot. Mm-hmm. So it looked as though he was trying to sell the physical contact from Cuadrado's hand, and in actuality, because you can see him grab his toe, he, I guess, is arguing that his toe, he's been stamped upon.
Yeah.
And Cuadrado does, you can see from the wide angle, does step on Ramos. I'm inclined to think that it's because he's trying to get the ball as quickly as he can to take the throw in. But, I mean, we've seen some crafty players do some things to try to rout their opponents. Ramos was already on a yellow, had been pretty wrought up that whole game. So you can imagine that maybe there could be a little bit of gamesmanship there. You step on his toe, he turns around and shoves you, he gets a yellow card, and he's off.
So is it possible that Juan Cuadrado, from the 6 months or so he spent at Chelsea with Diego Costa, learned some of the Diego Costa tricks where you make it look like something friendly or accidental has happened, but you're actually deliberately trying to get under the skin of your opponent?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, but I'm with you that you could watch that replay, and it probably comes down to your rooting interest and maybe a little bit of your inherent bias. You could watch that replay, and if you are a Sergio Ramos fan, you'll think, oh, Cuadrado knows what he's doing. He could have taken a wider angle. He could have gone around him. He knew where he was in relation to Sergio Ramos. He thought he'd get away with it. If you are not a Sergio Ramos fan, or maybe a neutral, you would think, oh, he's just trying to get the ball. Ramos is, being a sissy. Get up and keep playing. My
feeling, I'm trying to develop a hard opinion on this. I think that Cuadrado is innocent here. Because the way that Diego Costa, if Cuadrado did learn anything from Costa, if I'm thinking of it as Costa is the original and what Cuadrado's doing is like a clone of that, then it would have been a bit more sort of hard-faced. You know what I'm saying? Like Cuadrado looks immediately apologetic for stamping on him, and he goes out for catching him at all, and he does go over and apologise afterwards as well. And I think more like when I see Diego Costa do it, there's a bit more of a, not literally, but like some sort of wink and smirk that you can read into it if I know what I'm doing. Whereas with Cuadrado, I feel like he didn't know what he was doing, and it's really Sergio Ramos just taking full advantage of that opportunity.
And I'll say this, the reason why I think it was probably accidental is because, as soon as it happens, like he knows he has stepped on Sergio Ramos, and you see him do that sort of like, oh, hey, man, sorry. Yeah. Like I've done that in a game. Like you accidentally, to use your terms, you trod on someone, and then you sort of do like, oh, hey, man, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And it's usually like, oh, no big deal. And so that's what he does. And when Ramos goes down and then he gets that second booking, I think if he had meant to, again, this is just my own feeling, if he had intentionally done that, you don't react with that level of anger, because he definitely goes over there and has to be restrained. Yeah. And I think it's more like, you caught me. Like you'd still be a little bit mad and you'd still try to sell it, but you'd get that momentary like, crap, I've been figured out. Yeah. You wouldn't see that level of indignation of like, dude, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, and now I'm not going to get to play anymore. You are a jerk and I don't like you. And I'm maybe going to throw in some expletives there.
And it was nearly a brawl, right? I think in the end, wasn't it? It was either Chiellini or Bonucci. I know it was a centre-back came over and essentially persuaded. It looked to me, I don't speak Italian, but it looked to me like they'd, or lip read, that they'd persuaded him that it's better for us if you get off so that we can try and get an equaliser. Because it was 3-1, I think, at that point, right?
Yep.
And it was like, okay, just let us have these 8 minutes to try and score rather than just have you argue with the referee, which just kills our time.
Yeah. And to his credit, he then books it off the field.
Yes, definitely. You can see Cuadrado make the decision like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, I want a medal. I want my team to win. I want to be a good team player. I'm going to get off and hope they can pull it off. But instead, it's a goal from Asensio.
Yeah, and it's 4-1, and you're a man down, and really at that point, even before the fourth goal, obviously, but when you're 2 goals down to Madrid and you haven't looked very good in the entire half, and now you're a man down, it always feels like it's maybe not going to be your day.
And here's this puts the icing on the cake of our theory that Madrid just pushed their fullbacks higher in the second half. It's Marcelo, right, who sort of dribbles down the end line and then along the touchline towards goal before squaring it for Asensio. My dad says to me, that number 12, the left winger's been really good.
You mean their left fullback?
Exactly, yeah. Well, I said to him, that's what makes it even more impressive, right? Is that he's their left back, and yet he's able to be up there sort of attacking so regularly and so effectively. So once again, it was a Marcelo game.
Yeah, it was. And I think it's interesting, though, because... yes, it's a very comprehensive... Well, I wouldn't say comprehensive because he looked a little shaky at times, but it's a great game for Marcelo. Obviously, it's a great game for Madrid to get a 4-1 win. But is it weird that maybe like the enduring image of this game will be the 1 goal scored by Juventus?
Yes. Should we end... So obviously, congratulations to Real Madrid, right? I was calling it the dozenma, but I don't think that's what they call it. The dos decima?
I don't think so. Sure. I have no idea.
But anyway, 12 Champions League titles. That's just incredible. But yeah, the Mario Mandzukic goal is probably the goal of the game.
Yep. I mean, it's not just because of like the technical ability and the kind of the audacity to go for that, to go for an overhead kick from about 18 yards out and to hit it perfectly so that I know a lot of people, this prompted a huge debate about does David De Gea save that goal? And is that something that the Madrid board will be keenly aware of? And maybe he does. He's got 3 inches on Keylor Navas. So there's that. But I think that's an amazing goal. But even just the build-up, like it's really, really pretty interplay. And it's also like the ball doesn't hit the ground and it touches 3 different players on that Juventus team, which makes it all the prettier to look at.
Yeah, it's a little bit Fucci-ish, right? Especially the Higuain setup.
Yep.
I noticed that the way that Higuain sort of settled that for Mandzukic is a thing that they tried a couple of times, but the play was Higuain would like gently chest it or like lift it to Mandzukic, and then he makes a run in behind. So I think the idea is that Mandzukic plays it ahead for Higuain to get in on goal. I think that's what they were looking for. But because the Real Madrid defenders close in on Mandzukic so fast, I think they almost leave him with no option except to just have a go. So it's almost like they force his hand and force him into that incredible... it's not quite an overhead kick, is it? But it's definitely an over-the-head volley again.
Yeah, I forget who it was who was explaining. Maybe it was Brooks again who was writing that his plant foot doesn't leave the ground, so it can't be a full bicycle.
Yeah, but then I think the weight or the momentum takes him down afterwards, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so it's an amazing goal, and it probably is the best goal that I've ever seen scored in a Champions League final. So there's that.
Yeah.
But if you want like a metaphor for Juve's overall performance, so that goal from Mario Mandzukic happened. Mario Mandzukic also had a foul throw in this game, and so I feel like that kind of sums it up. Like moments of greatness, but then a lot of shooting yourself in the foot.
And then it's also when you said earlier on the third goal, which is Ronaldo's second goal, there was a player that Modric stepped and won the ball off of. It was Mario Mandzukic waiting for the ball to come to him. I think it was like a defensive header from maybe Sandro, and Mandzukic is just like waiting for that ball to bounce to him, and Luka Modric is like, there's a lot of time for me to just step in and take this here. So he just steps ahead of Mandzukic. Yeah. So I think, that kind of balances out as well, right? One moment of magic from Mandzukic, one foul throw, and one failing to step to a ball. So like two basic errors that cost Juventus the game.
Yep. Commiserations to Juventus fans. Congratulations to Madrid fans. I also wanted to add, I really enjoyed Zidane's substitutions. Because it felt very like what you want out of why Zinedine Zidane is a successful manager and why I think he will be a successful manager is both of my commentators, when they started preparing to make substitutions, said, oh, it's got to be Isco coming off because you can't take off Karim Benzema. And he takes off Karim Benzema and he leaves Isco on the field because Isco is having a better game. I mean, and Benzema did a lot of those sort of like Benzema things where he won't get credit, but he did a lot of link up and made some smart runs. But it spoke volumes to me that Isco was the one who stayed on and that Zidane is able to do that. Then it also spoke volumes to me that Isco eventually does come off for Asensio, who scores the fourth goal, who is kind of the sign, again, another representative, as is Casemiro, of Zidane being like, nope, I'm bringing in academy players. We're going to make this work. And then the third substitution, I tweeted this.
Actually, I'm pretty sure Asensio was a bargain buy from somewhere.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. My mistake. Yeah, but he's representative of that sort of like focus on having a deeper bench that isn't just crazy Galacticos.
Yeah.
That said, the final substitution is Toni Kroos coming off for Alvaro Morata. And that felt very much like, oh yeah, guys, here's some salt for that wound.
Yeah, that was hard to watch, wasn't it?
It really was, because it was like, oh, this guy who is super, super important for you that you really wanted to keep, but we inserted a buyback clause, he sits on our bench.
He gets like 3 minutes
play him
at the
for
end
one
of the Champions League.
Yeah. Yep. And I think I'm correct in saying that Zidane's son might have also been on the bench there. Really? I mean, I think he was in the squad, but didn't make the match day squad. Maybe.
Okay, that seems fairer. Yeah. Well, we should be getting a scouting report about that if that happened.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be coming through any moment now.
Final thing, which I don't know if this made it over to the broadcast on Fox, but it was a big deal here that Gareth Bale was playing in Cardiff, city of his birth, and winning a Champions League medal there. But it also, I'm not sure if anyone mentioned this, but doesn't Bale suddenly have 3 Champions League winners' medals now?
Does he really?
Yeah, I think he was there in 2014, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
I didn't realize that. That's ridiculous.
I may have that wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's already got 3. So that move was definitely worth it, no matter what anyone says.
Yeah. I mean, I really genuinely did not know that, but that is kind of amazing. Yep. So congratulations to him, I guess.
Yeah. One final note before we move on. You know,
I've just checked it. He has 3 Champions League winners medals.
There we go.
And 1 La Liga trophy, which is only one less than, or one fewer than Cristiano Ronaldo.
He's
so not bad.
He's catching up.
Yep.
Do you remember in our preview, I was semi-obsessed with Sergio Ramos on the set pieces?
Uh-huh.
So he didn't score one, obviously, but it was Chiellini marking him, and Chiellini marked him super tight, and Chiellini had a great tactic. He did this thing where Ramos would do the like cut left, cut right, try to get away. But then I watched this a couple of times. As the cross comes in, every time, just as Ramos is about to make that burst away, Chiellini pushes him every time.
Wow.
Just to give him a push, just so he can't be unbalanced to jump for the header. So I feel like Chiellini really had it down. That's the one part of the game defensively Juve got right, was how to shut down Ramos, and it's to push him and get away with it.
All right. Well,
so, pass it on.
People make note of that one. Yeah, I will. Just in case Sergio Ramos ever shows up in the CVSA here in Richmond, we'll be ready. Except we will not at all be ready. But
we'll be beaten is what we'll be. So, again, congratulations to Real Madrid. Anything else you want to say, Taylor, before we move on from the Champions League final?
No, just, I mean, it was a really, really entertaining game.
Yes,
and it was
that's worth saying, right? Yeah, from a neutral perspective, whether you're watching in a bar, whether you're watching for tactics or whatever you're doing, great game of football.
It was. Maybe, I would say, the best game of soccer played on Saturday.
All right, before we move on to that, we should let you know that today's show is sponsored by Ruffneck Scarves, makers of the official scarves of US Soccer, Major League Soccer, USL, and the NCAA.
They are also the providers of the Total Soccer Show Hello and Welcome scarf.
Yep.
Which we love, we wear, we enjoy.
I mean, I love the US national team scarves, but the Total Soccer Show scarf is probably the best one they've got.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But yeah, if you maybe know or love a U.S. fan who's struggling after that game on Saturday, is a little bit concerned about World Cup qualifiers, maybe they just need to be held tight in the embrace of a Ruffneck scarf. Oh,
I would say if you were kind of impressed with what you saw on Saturday, then maybe you want to celebrate with a Ruffneck scarf. Okay, we're going to have words when we talk about this game then. But if you do want to buy anything in the Ruffneck Scarves store, most of the scarves I think are $25. You get 20% off with our discount code, which is Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase. 20% off is $5 off. So you'll get a scarf for $20 from ruffneckscarves.com. The link will be where, do you think, Taylor?
I'm going to guess in the show notes?
I'm going to put the link in the show notes to ruffneckscarves.com with discount code Total Soccer Show.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So, with that in mind, shall we get to the USA's friendly with Venezuela?
Yeah, it sounds like you were not impressed.
I wasn't as upset at the time. I think there were like a few little things that made me get increasingly frustrated with the overall performance. Not necessarily the result, because it's a friendly. I'm not so concerned about whether or not we win or draw or whatever in a friendly, but it's the way the team looked.
Well,
there were definitely some signs that made me concerned.
Should we first let people know that the game finished 1-1? Venezuela scored in the first half. Christian Pulisic equalised in the 59th minute. Game finished 1-1 with Venezuela in the Rio Tinto Stadium in Utah. Okay, sorry, I cut you off. I just wanted to get that down in case someone hadn't. I wanted to make sure to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, I mean that's basically it. So like I don't want to put too much stock in a friendly result because I don't necessarily care about the result. I care about the performance, and there are aspects of this performance that I found a little worrying heading into 2 major World Cup qualifiers.
What worried you then? What's got you worried?
I think, and we always talk about him when we do our USA reviews, but Matt Doyle wrote a very good recap, and I think my favorite thing was he has a graphic.
Never heard of him. Never ever heard of him.
Never? Yeah. Well, he has a very good graphic of where, like, the starting position of where players received the ball.
Yes.
And not surprisingly, it's Michael Bradley receiving it very close to the 2 center backs. And there is a huge gap between center backs and Michael Bradley and basically the rest of the team. And that is disconcerting because that was something I felt like I saw a lot of the time. I'm not necessarily saying that's Michael Bradley's fault. I'm not saying it's not Michael Bradley's fault. But I'm saying that we saw the 2 center backs and Bradley get the ball routinely, turn, and have no options. And that is not great when you're coming up against 2 teams who are going to be very deadly and very defensive.
That's weird because the thing that I liked was the 3 ahead of Bradley, which was Nagbe on the left, Pulisic in the middle, and Fabian Johnson on the right. I kind of liked the passing play when we got it into that sort of like attacking third but outside the area. I really liked the sort of the short passing from those 3, and then the overlapping from Yedlin and Villafana. So to me, it's almost like that works, right? Like I'm okay with Bradley getting the ball deep, and then we work our way up the field, and then the guys farther ahead take care of it. I'd almost say that Opta passing chart that you're thinking of, and that's only because Bradley didn't get forward and join the attack, right? If he'd had more touches in the box or just outside the box, then his position would be higher.
No, I think no, because it's more about that's. I'm not concerned about where he got the ball. I'm concerned about where everyone else got the ball because there's a 30-yard gap. And I think that you're right that when the U.S. got the ball forward, they were okay in possession and they got some good chances. But that's a big when that happened. And there was a lot of times when it was Bradley sort of putting his foot on the ball and looking and looking and looking and then playing it to a center back who'd look and look and look and then play it back to Bradley. And so that's why the U.S. had really good possession stats. But at halftime, Bruce Arena was basically like, who cares about possession? We're being too slow on the ball. And it felt to me like there wasn't enough link-up play to get that ball into the attack quickly enough and with enough options like that you could play it to the right or you could play it to the left. It felt like it would usually just be one player would have to drop all the way back to help pick up the ball.
Yeah, actually, I did notice a lot of Bobby Wood coming deeper than I think he would have liked to get the ball.
Yep.
And then he would use his acceleration to get out of pressure, but he would accelerate backwards towards US defenders, which was really odd to see. It was a really weird experience. It's like someone who accidentally put their foot on the accelerator when they were in reverse, and didn't know didn't know where they were going. They just hope they don't hit anyone.
And it was interesting for me because I kept trying to kind of monitor where their starting positions were, and routinely, it started with Deuce and Bobby Wood up top, and it ended up being a lot of the times Clint Dempsey up top by himself and Bobby Wood dropping into midfield to try to make something happen, to try to get some combinations with Bradley and with Pulisic.
And I think the idea was maybe the hope was that Wood would be the pace in behind, but Venezuela sat really deep. It really was a stacked Venezuela defense that the US was trying to pick through. So I feel like I don't want to be too critical of the US because I think a lot of this is Venezuela defending deep. Yep. I'd also say there were 2 really good chances that came from Michael Bradley receiving the ball in that spot you talked about, and he plays those really good diagonals to the right-hand side for DeAndre Yedlin. The ones when he heads it on to Fabian Johnson and we get a move. I think Dempsey just doesn't get on the end of a pass. It's nearly a move. And another one where I think Yedlin takes the ball and then accelerates and gets to the end line and gets a cross in. So I still think there are ways that can work. And I think we might be better off with it against Trinidad.
Yeah, against Trinidad. But I still think I would like to see a little bit more diversity that doesn't necessarily require those long balls into the channels. I'd like to see a couple more passing combinations and some good triangles through the middle. But as I said, it's not necessarily that that kept happening and I was so frustrated. It's that there were little incidents that made like a kind of okay performance a little bit more negative than maybe I would have thought at the time. The two being the consistent vulnerability on set pieces is not great.
Yes.
And the one that really kind of made me go into a Twitter rant was John Brooks.
What?
And I do not understand.
See, I kind of enjoyed John Brooks' performance. I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
No, it's not his performance. It's not his performance. It's that he was very obviously injured.
Oh,
that
yes.
He has a non-contact injury. He comes down. It looked like he's holding his hip at first, but it quickly becomes apparent that it's a hamstring injury. And he's rubbing it. He stays down. He limps off and kind of continues to stretch it out, and then goes back on the field and plays for another 5 minutes. And the entire time he's playing is visibly limping.
Yep.
He's playing as though he's playing on a team that doesn't have substitutions left and has to continue to play in a competitive game. And they have substitutions, and it's a relatively meaningless friendly.
Yep.
So why are you risking the one person that you absolutely have to have start at center back to make everybody feel confident? Why are you risking him another 5 minutes in a meaningless game?
I remember Stu Holden saying, well, they wouldn't send him back out there unless they were 100% sure that he's fully recovered. And then 5 minutes later, because that's the common sense. I mean, I think Stu Holden's right to think that, right? Because that's the common sense approach. But yeah, it turns out they should have pulled Brooks out immediately. But again, this is like the Allegri thing, right? Where hindsight's 20/20, and maybe you should have started with a back four.
No, see, I disagree. It's like if John Brooks, like that was kind of the thing that made me like not care so much about this game, is that it is a friendly, it's a tune-up for 2 World Cup qualifiers. So in my mind, like if John Brooks stubbed his toe, sub him out. Like you don't need to risk him. And so I felt like it was an obvious non-contact. Ooh, something has tightened up.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if you've had those, but I have had those, and I'm sort of stubborn and of the mind of like, oh, I'll just run it off. It'll be fine. And then you end up pulling your hamstring. And I feel like that's what happened. I'm not going to be surprised if he pulls out of this squad.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know if that, like, if those extra couple minutes exacerbated the situation or if he was already sort of like in a bad way. But either way, it doesn't, like, you play a man down, you concede another goal. It's a friendly. People might be mad about the result, but they'll be happy when John Brooks starts the next game. So that just seemed kind of crazy to me. It doesn't feel like hindsight. It feels like an obvious thing in the moment. I was screaming it in the moment.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you then. That he definitely should have come out. Can we switch it up and get to some of my positive points so that we don't go all negative? Sure. I want to say I didn't like, when I saw the lineup, I saw Fabian Johnson at right midfield. I thought, oh, that's weird because he plays left mid for Borussia Mönchengladbach. I really liked what I saw from Fabian Johnson. I really liked the sort of clever runs in behind that he made and the really interesting, like, one-touch passes that he made. I'm hoping that you will, if we were in the office, I would like act this out for you so you'd see what I'm talking about. But I love what I'm talking about is those Fabian Johnson things where he receives the ball and like opens up his body immediately and plays like a one-time pass in the either opposite direction or plays it farther wide. I think he's really good at sort of opening up the angles when he receives the ball and playing a one-touch pass to spread things out. And I think it was really great to see him receiving that ball on the right and then seeing Yedlin sort of bombing outside of him and Johnson immediately redirects it to him.
Yeah.
Not
Sorry, buddy. We're going to disagree on this one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're talking about. And yes, he had those moments where you're reminded that he's a very good player. But he also had some moments where I was like, what is he doing? Oh, right. He's missed half of the Bundesliga season or like the last 10 weeks or whatever with injury. I felt like he looked very rusty at times and just kind of had those moments. I think he had a shot in the first half that he completely whiffed. And he just had a few different moments here and there where it was just sort of that technical ability that we've come to expect from him was not quite on display in the consistent way that we would expect, especially from him playing in an attacking position. All
right, my final point for Fabian Johnson, he has the assist on the Pulisic goal with a very nice cutback and a move that he's very much involved in.
All right, so let's talk about that for a second, though, because I am curious. You were always very good about like going back and looking at the goals and seeing the little like intangible moments that really added up to it. And I was watching this one myself, and I feel like, yeah, there's some good passes in there, but it does seem like this goal is 90% Christian Pulisic. So talk to me about why you think Fabian Johnson deserves some more credit.
Well, okay, it is 70% Christian Pulisic because it's him that sort of makes that sort of turn away, like the fake one way, then goes the other way to open up enough space to shoots from distance, finds the corner. Okay, so yeah, it is mostly Christian Pulisic. But there's a great combination between Villafaña, who sort of plays the ball quickly, accelerates, into Fabian Johnson. And then Johnson, I think, you take it for granted how many times you see a player not cut the ball back when that's the right pass, but they try to get to the end line and chip it in for no reason, or they just think it's better to just drive it into the box. Fabian Johnson, instead of like trying to play a hopeful ball in, cuts it back to Christian Pulisic. And I think it's a really important sort of smart, quick thinking pass, a really smart pass to make.
Okay, I'll give you that one. I can see that. That well argued, well fought, sir.
And I enjoyed Villafaña as well. Like Villafaña's role in this was, he was the guy, and I agree with you that the tempo was not as fast as I would like to see it. But in this moment, it's Villafaña who's like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? Like immediately, like moves the ball quickly and runs quickly just to like get the tempo moving a lot faster. And that's what breaks it open so that Pulisic eventually gets the ball and makes the space to shoot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I was really impressed by Jorge Villafaña. I'm happy that we have him at left back.
Portland fans were right all along, right? We should have listened to them 2 or 3 years ago when they were saying, hey, how about Villafaña for left back? Hey, how about Villafaña for left back?
Yeah, so they were right on that one. I think it's just a hunch. Portland fans might be sad, though, come the first World Cup qualifier. Because I think there's a chance that we do see Fabian Johnson start again, but not on the right wing. And I think we see him on the left wing, which means Darlington Nagbe might not start that World Cup qualifier.
You weren't impressed with Darlington Nagbe?
I was very impressed with Darlington Nagbe, but I think Fabian Johnson, I really do think that he did not look as good as I expected him to look as an attacking player. And I think that maybe part of that is because he's playing on the right instead of the left. And if you're Bruce Arena and you're trying to make him comfortable, because I think he is one of the team's better players, I don't know if he's necessarily consistently always going to be better than Darlington Nagbe, but I think I'm just a little worried that maybe Nagbe loses out because Bruce Arena wants to keep Fabian Johnson in.
Here's my prediction. My prediction is that the starting 11 against Trinidad and Tobago is, like, injury permitting, this exact team, but with Josie Altidore instead of Bobby Wood. And I think the only reason Bobby Wood started ahead of Altidore in this game is that Altidore came late to camp because I believe of his brother's wedding.
Yep.
So, but I think the shape was absolutely set up to play as we thought they would play against Trinidad, right? With Pulisic in the middle. And I really think Arena's got it in his head that, Pulisic central attacking midfielder, Nagbe on the left, Johnson on the right. And I honestly think that's the way it's going to go. And I get that there are moments that you weren't impressed with Johnson, but I was impressed with a lot of little things. So I think there's enough there that Bruce Arena's not going to be like, oh, none of this works, forget it. Like the thing I've been planning, I'm not going to do it now. I think there's just enough for him to stick with this shape.
All right. Well, we've got some more U.S. national team coverage coming up this week and some more interviews. So maybe I'll lead with that question every time, and we'll see what people think.
All right.
It won't be leading at all. I won't be like, is Fabian Johnson the best player on this team, or do you think he had a bad game?
A great right midfielder or the greatest right midfielder? Shall we talk about Venezuela's goal? Because this is the thing that has had most people worried. You mentioned it earlier. It was defending set pieces again. And I've got to say, this goal was Fabian Johnson's fault.
Okay. Talk us through it then.
So here's what I saw.
Because I think I say that because I think a lot of people are inclined to say it's John Brooks' fault.
Why is that? I saw that in the Matt Doyle piece because of a fluffed clearance. To me, it's Clint Dempsey heading the ball away.
It's his man who scores. He completely loses his man. His man is standing wide open. Because
I disagree. Watch this again. Here's what I see. Salomon Rondon, right? Big guy. Mm-hmm. The plan seems to be that John Brooks and Jeff Cameron are both marking Salomon Rondon. And the guy that scores, Velasquez, is being marked by Fabian Johnson. But because Fabian Johnson switches off after that ball is headed out by Dempsey and then comes back in, it looks like it's Brooks' man because he switches and is the last man closest to him when he actually scores. But it was Fabian Johnson who marks him when the corner initially comes in. Instead, the US had gone with both of our big centre-backs are going to both mark Salomon Rondon.
All right. Well, it seems like you've watched this many more times than I have, so I'll have to go with that. But that's why I thought most people were blaming Brooks. That's why I was inclined to blame John Brooks for that, because the replays definitely make it look like he has completely just drifted away from Velasquez to try to be like in on the action in case that ball comes back in, maybe thinking it's been cleared. But that might also just be that's where the replays pick it up, and you don't see the maybe 2 seconds before where he was in the right position. So we'll have to give that one a second viewing. I'm
pretty confident that it's Fabian Johnson who's marking him originally, and then when the ball is cleared, and we've seen him do this before, he sort of forgets that he's supposed to be tracking people. And I think he's thinking about getting forward and getting involved in the attack. And instead, when it comes back in, his man he's got the jump on him. Okay, so so I understand that maybe you might disagree with this, but if we take it, just take it as a given for now that we were doing this double man marking Salomon Rondon, which was I think it was Cameron right up on him and Brooks just behind him. I'm thinking that might be a thing that they're preparing for Kenwyne Jones.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
So then you'll have a big two center.
Obvious aerial threat.
Yeah, but then at the same time, even though that seems to make sense, it definitely didn't work out on this corner kick, right? Because when you're all focused on marking the big guy, it leaves sort of lesser talented markers marking the other guys. Like there is another version of this where they only have one man marking Rondon, and then say Brooks can officially go and mark Velasquez. And then maybe this play ends up better. So I'm really caught in two minds about whether this is a genius idea from Bruce Arena or a terrible idea because we focus too much on the one guy and then all the other guys are a little more free to score.
Well, I think the more disconcerting thing is just that it seems like the United States kind of consistently are vulnerable on set pieces. And so it kind of feels like it doesn't really matter what they do. People keep switching off. People keep leaving their marks, or people just keep starting in the wrong position. And so that's the thing that really has to be locked down.
Was it the long throw against Panama was the problem?
And the near post corner kick that gave Mexico the win in Columbus.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. Cause I really like when I first saw this double man marking thing, I really thought, oh, wow, the US has really got it together. They've got this like weird but interesting plan to deal with things. Mm-hmm. And then goal, Venezuela.
Yeah. And I would say this, though, like it's tough to say because you don't know. I don't know if 3 is enough to be a pattern. But it is worth noting that it's not as though it is consistently like, oh, we're double marking the big guy and we get overly focused on him and then some other guy comes in and scores. Like if that happened 3 times, that's the pattern. But that it's like a long throw. Then it was some kind of chaos where they thought they cleared here in this Venezuela game. And then it was like a driven near post where somebody fell asleep at the near post. Like it's so 3 different types of set piece goals. So maybe that plays into it a little bit. You're
saying it's a pattern of 3 different mistakes, so it's not easy to get one thing out.
Yeah. But that said, I forget what the statistic was of like Soccernomics. I think it was like in the Premier League in like 2011, it was like it took 80 corners for a team to score off of a corner on average. So maybe then, if you keep that in mind, the USA kind of consistently conceding off of set pieces and corners, maybe there is an issue.
I think it's a weird thing with international soccer, though, right? Where you only get to practice together so much. I genuinely think that league teams get more practice defending set pieces together and just, it's a more regular personnel and they just have it down better. And I also think, man, if you wanted to be really anti-Klinsmann pro Arena, you would say that like they're recovering from years of not working on set pieces.
But I mean, you could do that, but I just think it's maybe players not quite being ready to go. Like in this situation, it just seemed a little slack. It didn't feel like everybody was ready for World Cup qualifiers. It felt more so like everybody was ready to be on vacation after a long season.
Well, we'll find out Thursday when the US plays Trinidad. I've got one more question for you, Taylor.
Sure.
I heard a lot of people talking about the US playing a 3-5-2 in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it more as either a 3-4-3 a la Chelsea with Pulisic and Nagbe, the Hazard and Pedro, or, and people are I might get hurt for saying this, a 3-6-1. Yes, it kind of was, because it looked often like 4 central midfielders, right, with Bradley and Acosta deep, and then Pulisic and Nagbe ahead of them. That's 4 midfielders with 2 wingbacks makes 6.
Yeah, or 3-4-2-1.
Yeah,
I mean, again, it's a matter of where you put the players in your like estimation. But I think overall, the key point is that it was a back 3. Whether or not that happens again, I don't know. But I enjoyed it, and I like that it's a possibility. Given that I do think our fullbacks function better as wingbacks, and I think we have enough center backs to have 3 good starting center backs. I don't know if Omar Gonzalez is one, but I think he would be. I think if you were adding a third one in there, it's probably Omar. But again, it was sort of an Omar performance that he had moments that looked good. He had moments where he looked slow and maybe drifted a little bit. I saw one person writing that they were at the game seated like right behind the goal. And when Omar Gonzalez came in, I think it was like 5 minutes after he came on, Tim Howard like screamed at him for a solid 30 seconds. And after that, he played much better. So maybe he just needs a little bit of a pick-me-up, and then he's good to go.
A shout-me-up.
Yeah, exactly.
So would I?
Hey, I don't want to get screamed anymore. Oh.
I would say as well that when a lot of people used to dream of wingbacks for the United States, right? And it was always Yedlin on the right, Fabian Johnson on the left. And I always felt like, it's maybe a fit for Yedlin, but that's weird for Fabian Johnson because it's a lot of ground to cover up and down, right? For Villafana, it makes a lot more sense. I really think if you really do want to go wingbacks, Yedlin and Villafana is the way to go.
Yep. I absolutely agree.
So, yeah, maybe this... So, and everyone has been saying 3-5-2. How about the US plays a 3-5-2? Maybe the 3-4-3 or the 3-4-2-1 might be the future. And I think there's a chance we see this against Mexico. Because, my prediction going into this Venezuela game was, one thing is we could see the Trinidad formation in the first half, and then later on, second half, we see the Mexico formation, so that Arena gets to give both shapes a run out. I think... Not that he's 100% doing it, that he's at least thinking about it and was giving it a test in that last 30 minutes.
He might be, but I think your earlier statement is absolutely correct. I do think that this, as I tweeted, this is like the strongest 11 essentially, minus Josie Altidore, arguably. So I think you're right. I think this is roughly the team we'll see. I do still have that slight concern about Johnson Nagbe. But overall, I think we've pretty much seen it's going to be that kind of 4-1-3-2. Maybe he'll adjust that a little bit just to make up for some of the issues they had. And then we'll see what happens against Mexico.
All right. I'm kind of looking forward to the Trinidad game now. I'm going to be not in England. I'm going to be in Spain for that. So I'm another hour ahead of you. So I think this game is like middle of the night for me. But I'm going to try and watch it.
All right. I like it. And even if you can't, we still have plenty of people around to talk about it, but hopefully you can be there to contradict some of my sentiments. I did want to ask you, though, how is the feeling in England knowing that you now can no longer ever call Dom Dwyer to the English national team? Oh, so is everybody upset?
No one has mentioned it because I don't think anyone knows who Dom Dwyer is.
Yeah, there's probably that. I had a feeling.
Yeah, which is, unfortunate because he deserves more recognition, but I don't think anyone's too worried about it.
No, probably not. But yes, that's my clever way of saying Dom Dwyer is in the 40-man provisional roster that was released at halftime. There was a part of me that felt like maybe Bruce Arena was like, it's going to be a 36-man roster, and then we'll figure it out. And then first half went really poorly. And he was like, add 4 names that will make everybody talk about it, and then they'll stop focusing on this game. Like, Dom Dwyer, Jesse Gonzalez, get him in there. Kenny Saif, too. Why not?
Is there anyone who may be eligible to play for another national team? Get them on this.
So kind of went that route.
Do I understand this correctly that he had to name 40 names because then the final 23-man Gold Cup roster, and this happens in July, by the way, for people who don't know the Gold Cup, has to come from that 40?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that means that it's not guaranteed that Dwyer makes that 23, right? But there's a good chance. The one that caught my eye more than anything was Jesse/Hesse Gonzalez.
Yes, I think it is Jesse. We heard Stu Holden... I heard Stu Holden say at halftime that he was trying to make sure he knew the pronunciation. Okay. I believe he went with Jesse, so I'm going to back him.
Okay,
but yes, that's the Mexican-American goalkeeper, FC Dallas goalkeeper, had reportedly said earlier in the week that he had chosen Mexico, that yes, he was born in the United States, but his whole family was from Mexico, so he was going to represent them.
Yeah, I thought
then he's in this squad.
I thought that was that. I really thought, okay, we've lost Gonzalez. I get it, though. You got torn loyalties. Eventually, you have to choose one or the other, and we lost this one. Okay, I get it. And then I saw his name, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised. And so at first, I thought maybe it was just sort of like, oh, yeah, we'll put him on the roster. If he comes, he does, but at least we're showing intent. And it's a way of – basically, I thought at first that it was a way of making him make the decision.
Yeah.
That it's sort of like, you need stop waffling. If you're going to play for Mexico, then you have to reject this call-up, and then we'll know for sure.
Yeah.
But then it comes out, as Stu Holden reported, that essentially it sounds like he has – said, if I make the 23-man roster for the U.S. national team for the Gold Cup, I will go and I will officially play for the United States, and that will be that.
So do you think something's happened behind the scenes where maybe Mexico weren't as interested as Gonzalez thought?
Well, I did think that. I thought that maybe he had then contacted Mexico and they had said, oh, well, we don't really need you this summer, thanks. But Stu Holden has just updated to say his tweet was, I'm hearing that Osorio and the Mexican Federation have contacted Jesse Gonzalez after the USMNT roster was announced. He remains committed to the United States. Ooh. So maybe he thought he'd be in the Confederations Cup squad, and when he wasn't, just said, okay, yeah, I'll play for the USA. Whatever. And now they're like, well, no, we'll put you on our Gold Cup roster too. So we shall see what happens. That will be very interesting to watch and see where he falls and if he makes that squad when the 23 are officially announced.
I've got to say, if you're Gonzalez and you're 50-50, right, and like you sort of would be happy playing for Mexico and you'd be happy playing for the United States, right, which is, I understand, is a real dilemma when you like want two things equally, but you can only have one. I have this problem in restaurants all the time. If you looked at the current state of US goalkeeping, with, Howard getting older, Romando getting older, Guzan not in great form, Horvath still to prove himself 100%. Like, he's not the guarantee. A lot of people are very much in love with him, including me and you and Will Parchman. But it seems like there is an opportunity for someone to grab those gloves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like the smarter decision, if you're just doing this purely calculation-wise as opposed to with your heart, I think it's the smarter decision to go with the US.
We shall see. We shall see, because I really, it could go either way. Maybe Mexico then say, actually, we have a vacancy on the Confederations Cup squad, and you'll get to go. And then maybe he accepts that call up. Who knows? The other one that I thought was really, really interesting in terms of possible dual nationals or will be a dual national is Kenny Saif.
Yeah, what's the deal there?
He plays for Ghent, I think. Not Genk, right? Ghent. That's always a little confusing. Played in the Champions League, is a Champions League player, has also been capped by Israel twice. But according to Brian Sciaretta, as of today, he has filed his one-time switch. He is looking to permanently play for the United States from now on.
Okay, so it's about that paperwork going through, and then maybe he makes the Gold Cup roster.
Yeah, but he's one that has been on. I think I wrote an article about it, or like a list of potential Americans for Pace Soccer.
Yeah.
And he was on there, and he was one of those that sort of was like, yeah, he's theoretically one, but he's never going to play for the U.S. He's already played for Israel. He's never going to not play for them anymore. He's Israeli Druze, so he's going to play for that team. And now here he is playing for the U.S. theoretically.
Anything else stand out for you on the 40-man Gold Cup roster?
Oh, yeah. Eric Lehigh, Matt Miazga, it's nice to see them sort of back in there with consideration. So I'm excited to see them. Joe Corona, the same. I wrote an article, again, called Forgotten Americans. And it was people who hadn't made a cap for the U.S. in over a year. Joe Corona was on that list, but he's in the squad. And then the one that I think will make you the happiest is Christian Roldan.
Yes, I've been waiting for this. Well deserved, I think. Well deserved, yeah. And I think midfield's reasonably deep, right? Acosta's ahead of him, and some others, Dax McCarty, etc. But Christian Roldan is someone who definitely deserves a look for the US national team, just to see if he fits in. I'm really excited to see this. Mm-hmm.
And I know MLS Twitter exploded with the news that Tommy McNamara was on that squad as well.
Yes!
There's lots of reasons for people to be be excited this Gold Cup roster. And again, I do feel like maybe Bruce Arena was put it out at halftime in case this game goes south.
Did you just refer to MLS Twitter as its own subgenre?
Yeah.
There's Twitter, there's soccer Twitter, and there's MLS Twitter.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I like it.
There's you can look around and see the accounts that kind of very much focus on Major League Soccer, and those are the ones that if they're excited about Tommy McNamara, I'm like, all right, let's do this then. Why not?
I'd say follow Total MLS, unrelated to us, but they're called Total MLS for MLS GIFs. They're pretty quick at gifing those MLS things and getting them up there.
Yep. So we're excited for the Gold Cup roster, but obviously more on that later in the summer. Are we excited to officially name Venezuela as our new rival?
I think our new overlords.
I mean, right? So draw with them in a friendly, but then lose in the U20 World Cup. I think overall that means that they are now our nemesis.
Yep. So I got the good end of this deal. In the U20 World Cup quarterfinal, it was, a 2 a.m. Eastern kickoff for you guys in the East Coast of the United States. Here in sunny England, it was a 7 a.m. kickoff. It was a breakfast game. US under-20s in an under-20 quarterfinal, World Cup quarterfinal against Venezuela. I got up, I made some coffee, I was all excited, and then I suffered for 120 minutes.
So I did not do that. We had a couple people tweet and ask me if I was going to stay up, and I really did look at the clock for a solid 30 seconds. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. So I did not stay up. I've seen the highlights. I've read a couple of reports. But, Daryl, why don't you talk us through it since you have seen far more than I have?
Yeah, I guess so the US lost 2-1 after extra time. But really, they were lucky to get to 90 minutes at 0-0. And then they went 2-0 down in extra time. And it really was over until Ebobisse got sort of a late header to make it look a lot more respectable. A more realistic scoreline would have been 4-0 Venezuela. They were that good. So
here's my question about that.
Ask me anything, AMA, about this game.
So, first of all, do you think Jonathan Klinsmann heard my interview with Will Parchman, got mad, and decided to have an amazing game?
Yes, I think that's very, very possible. Klinsmann was very good. I've heard it compared to Tim Howard against Belgium levels.
Yeah.
It was not that. But there were some good saves in here.
Yeah, I think it was telling to me that in the highlights and in the US Soccer report where they tell you key moments, this was kind of hilarious and also kind of sad to me that I read the key moments and it was Jonathan Klinsmann save. Yep. To the point where I was I want to see something that isn't a Klinsmann save. And then it was Eric Williamson. And I was okay, so the United States did have a chance, and it was had a very dramatic slide tackle to prevent a shooting opportunity. And it's oh no. So this game was not pretty.
That's why I'm saying it wasn't Tim Howard versus Belgium. It was more, Acosta Eric Palmer-Brown, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Derek Jones, Justin Glad, who played right back ahead of Aaron Herrera. It was like defending for their lives. It was block tackle, slide tackle, head it clear, then get ready for the next one. It was just that. And then every time the US tried to play through the midfield, through Jones, Adams, and Williamson, the Venezuelan midfield would just press and crush. It was so different to watching the senior team play. This was like a really confident, really big and strong, but also really talented U20 team. And the US midfield just could not handle it. We talked about Yangel Herrera, I believe his name is. He's a Man City player on loan at New York City FC. He's the captain of this team. He was absolutely a different class in this game. Too big, too strong, too quick, too clever. Like really nice little passes, just dominated midfield.
Was he, just a quick question, was he too fast and too furious?
He made me furious watching this game.
That was another topical reference to the second in the Fast and the Furious franchise. The Paul Walker Tyrese vehicle.
6 movies ago, right?
I believe so. So with all that said, was this a case, and I know that like we try not to do the lazy analysis, and maybe this isn't because it might just be the narrative. Was this just a better team? Because I've heard a lot of people say that they're the favorites, that they've looked like the best team in this tournament, that they're expected to win the tournament. Was this just the U.S. meeting a superior team and doing what they could to hold on, but ultimately succumbing? Or was it Venezuela are very good, the United States looked pretty poor?
I think it's both. I genuinely think it's both. Okay. So this is a very, very good team, right? We talked about the talent on the wings, Cordova and Peñaranda, like really dangerous, talented guys. But the US sort of had that Tab Ramos game plan, right? Which we were praising recently, right? Will Parchman was praising recently when you had him as a guest on the show, which is to kind of defend, hassle, and then break fast, right? The US could not do that against Venezuela. Every time the US tried to break fast, Venezuela would just win the ball back immediately. So any sort of counterattack that the US tried to start, Venezuela just slapped it down with some like really tough physical defending and then really good ball retention. So we had to work really hard to win the ball back, then couldn't break anytime we got it. Then Venezuela just came straight back at us. And to me, it's that, yes, they were better, they were stronger, but also that we only had that one game plan. And so we couldn't do anything else with it. Eventually, I think towards the end of 90 minutes, we switched to the US v New Zealand game plan, which was Tyler Adams subbed out. Jeremy Abobase came on and joined Josh Sargent up front, who had been really isolated because we never broke enough to get it to him. And then we went more direct, tried to get flick-ons from Abobase or tried to have him hold it up. And it looked a little better, but we were just ground into the dirt at that point. We were just exhausted.
So I was a little disappointed to see, I think it was the second goal, again, coming off a set piece. It seemed like Eric Palmer-Brown drifted, lost his man a little bit. Obviously, that was for the second goal, and it sounds like you said he had a very good game overall. So is that the case? Like, was he kind of the one organizing the defense and maybe just had that one slip-up that cost him dearly? Or was it kind of an up-and-down game for him all the way through?
No, him and Carter Vickers were really, really impressive in terms of just blocking things, tackling things, clearing things, heading things away, chasing things down. But it's that thing, right? You make one mistake when you're under pressure like that, and you absolutely get punished for it. A good example, I think, is the first goal, right? Peñaranda, the left winger with the bleach blonde hair who we were talking about, definitely a guy to keep an eye on. I think he's already played for the Venezuelan national team. So, he's definitely scouting network eligible. He was that good. We'd sort of mostly contained things because we've got Brooks Lennon on the right, then Justin Glad as centre-back behind him. The first goal comes just because Brooks Lennon is taken out of the play because he thinks he's won a throw-in. Roundabout midfield. It's given to Venezuela. Lennon is protesting the throw-in, and they just take it quickly. And all of a sudden, they've outnumbered us down that wing, and then they're able to sort of. So here's an example: Eric Palmer-Brown gets a tackle in on Peñaranda, but his tackle goes loose, and there's another Venezuelan player, I think it's Sosa, who gets on the end of it and returns it to Peñaranda. They just outnumbered us in that one moment, whereas before the US had sort of stood as a wall and just been able to just keep constantly clearing it. So, but once there was one brick missing in the wall, it was easy for them to break through.
So overall, are you going to be sad that they didn't advance? Not just because, actually, removing the whole we want the US to go as far as they can in a tournament, potentially win it someday. Are you just sad because it means that it's now it would have been on a more favorable time schedule for you to watch the games?
Yeah, this would have been nice. Yeah, morning breakfast games for me to watch the U20 World Cup. I guess I could maybe still watch England. I don't know how England did against Mexico in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, we had that question from somebody about why isn't Daryl more excited about England at the U20 World Cup? And my answer was that he's not actually English, but it's been a fake accent this whole time. But that's not really true, but yeah.
So the real answer is that England has traditionally never really valued the U20 World Cup because I think we talked about this briefly, right? That like European nations tend to value more the U21 tournaments. So the stronger team gets sent to the U21 tournaments and we don't really pay attention to U20s. And I kind of assumed that this would be the same and this England team wouldn't be worth watching. And now we're already at the quarterfinal stage and I haven't really watched them play. And also the honest truth is there's so much other stuff that we've been covering for the show. Plus I've got deadlines for some other work that I'm doing that there just wasn't time to commit to another team. But I might hop on that bandwagon if they've made the semi-finals. Shamelessly.
Well, they have not played yet. They play Mexico on June 5th, but I think that might be June 4th, our time.
Okay, so that is today, right?
Your time, rather. Yep, I believe so.
All right, so yeah, well, I'll keep an eye out for that result. I'll jump on the bandwagon, and if anyone says, wait, did you just jump on? I'll say, no, I was here all along.
I'm trying to see who that means. So you'll get the winner of Italy-Zambia. The other semifinal will be Uruguay-Venezuela.
Okay.
Boom. There we are.
But the US no longer involved.
Unfortunately, no.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for me about this U20 quarterfinal?
No, I think you've covered it all. Other than, is Josh Sargent going to be okay? I hear he had to leave. I hear he was bleeding.
Yeah, he got his head cut open. I think he looked shocked when it happened. He came back on. He came back on with a bandage and played most of the rest of the game. I think he was subbed out for Lagos Kunga later on. But okay, he's out of the tournament. But 4 goals in a U20 World Cup at 17 years old. Not too shabby, let's say that.
He'll be there next time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So then I guess the final question that I think a lot of people are going to have are, do you think overall this was good enough? Do you think that it's the second time now that the United States have made the quarterfinals, which is, I think, the first time a U.S. coach has ever taken 2 U20 teams to back-to-back quarterfinal rounds? It's a long graphic there, or a long statistic there. But, I mean, are we pleased with this? I mean, obviously we always want them to go further, but do we think this was a good result? Was this a good tournament? Or does it remain to be seen based on what Venezuela do overall? I
mean, I feel good about it. I think we may be in 2015 territory where we got knocked out by what may be the eventual champion, maybe? We'll see, right? It could be the next round, then Venezuela gets destroyed and we're like, maybe they weren't that good. Maybe they weren't that good all along. But yeah, I mean, quarterfinal for a U20 tournament, not bad at all. Because, I mean, there's not like a huge history of US success there, right? So, and I also think, genuinely, watching those U17s, the next generation coming up is possibly even better. So I think as long as these things keep improving, one day we might even make the Olympics.
One day we might.
But I think eventually we'll have a US team with fullbacks. I think that's what's going to change everything. Like, when we were talking... We're previewing this Venezuela game and we're talking about, I think his name's Hernandez, the number 20, who's like an overlapping fullback. And then you think of the Champions League final, to go back to the very beginning of this show, we talked heavily about the involvement of Dani Alves.
7 years ago.
Of Alexandro, of Marcelo and Carvajal, and how involved all of those guys were in the goals. I think fullbacks are just more important than US youth development has realised until recently. From what I've been told, we are now developing fullbacks and there may be some good guys in the pipeline instead of us putting Justin Glad, a centre-back at right-back against Venezuela, and Danny Acosta, essentially a centre midfielder who's been converted late in his career to a left-back. So I think maybe when that changes, the US starts really competing at youth tournaments.
So give us your fullbacks. That's our new slogan for this team. I like it.
Yeah, you're tired, you're poor, you're overlapping fullbacks.
That's what it is. Thank you for that. Well, I was going to start that, and I was like, "You're tired fullbacks?" No, I don't want tired fullbacks. I got to work on this a little bit more. I'm glad that you were more on the ball than I was. Well done, buddy.
I'm a recent immigrant.
There you go.
All right, Tyler.
All right. Well, so lots of games, but many more to talk about. So we'll have you back on, intermittently during your vacation? Is that the plan?
I'm kind of hoping to do quick take, hot take after Trinidad and after Mexico, but we'll just have to see if things work out sort of time-wise and technology-wise, because I'm not sure what I'm up against. I'm not sure what my home studio will look like in Spain.
All right. We shall see. But until then, thanks for taking the call, buddy.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
I was going to see if you were going to let me flip it around. I figured you wouldn't, and you did not disappoint. My pleasure. Right back at you, buddy.
All right, listeners, thank you for listening. Keep tuning in this week. Tyler's going to have some great guests. He's sort of given me a peek behind the curtain of who he's got coming up, and I'm really excited to listen. I'm really, Tyler, genuinely excited to be a TSS listener when I'm not on the show. It's like I get to listen to the podcast, and it'd be a surprise what's coming. So, yeah, best of luck this week.
It's going to be like an avant-garde, like alternative podcast where it's just going to be me talking to like my imaginary guests for a while. So it's going to be one side of a conversation. I hope you guys really, really enjoy it.
It's going to be me one versus me two.
Yes, exactly. It's not going to be that, I promise. I would not do that to people.
There's an actual podcast out there of a British comedian, Richard Herring, playing snooker against himself and narrating the game.
Oh, all right. I can do that.
He says downloads get smaller every week, but he's going to keep doing it.
Do you remember? First of all, that's great. Second of all, to reference our recent Parks and Recreation 11, did you see the episode where they're doing the simulated disaster response?
No.
Do you remember that one?
No.
Okay, yeah, it's the one where Jeremy Jam throws stink bombs during her nuptials. But in that the disaster is they're hit by like avian flu, I think, and she has the introductory video where Leslie Knope plays 7 different characters or something like that. That's going to be me this whole week. It's going to be me being all different pundits from around the world and working on my terrible accents. Should be great.
I think the punishment for that is you go straight to jail.
Yeah, that's fair. Overcooked fish, straight to jail.
All right, enough rambling. I really am going to say goodbye to you this time.
All right, buddy.